We are going to talk about the overall military forces in Kenya since independence. I also want to tell you that there were changes in names and there were changes in their scope of work, job description. So I will not just say A took over from B, from C, from D, from I will try to explain a few things here. Because I've Googled, and what Google is saying, there's a lot of things I don't agree with that. Let us start with General Robert Penford. General Robert Penford, uh, I think he took over from Brigadier Hardy. Because Brigadier Hardy is the person who had a meeting with Jaramogi in 1960, where he told Jaramogi to take over, and Jaramogi said he could not take over. They should release Jomo Kenyatta, and Kenyatta takes over. Maybe Jaramogi should have said that, should have taken over, and then him, in his capacity as the prime minister, should have released Jomo Kenyatta. Anyway, that is what under the bridge. So we will start in 1966. That was General Robert Penfold, a British fellow, was the overall head of the military from 30th November 1966 to 31st May 1969. Now, I want to say this, that his position, now that is where I now come for this position called job description. His position was called CDF. CDF, just like today, Chief of the Defense Forces. And he took over earlier on. Before he took over, kina Brigadier Hardy were also called CDF, Chief of the Defense Forces. But you'll find that, as I say, General Penfold took over in 1966. When he took over in 1966, the Air Force and the Navy were 2 years old, because both came into being. Kenya Navy and Kenya Air Force came into being in 1964. And you see, in 1964, so by the time the General Robert Penfold took over on 30th November 1966, the two were still very young. So they were just, we could say, the Air Force, we could call it Air Army. Air Army. There are some countries where the Air Force is Air Army. That is like the police air wing. So that one would be the Army Air Wing or something like that. So General Robert Penford's position was called Chief of the Defense Forces. But over 90% of his personnel were Army people. There were very few airmen, and even fewer sailors. Then he was there up to 31st May 1969. Then on Madaraka Day 1969 to 24th June 1971, it was Major General Joseph Ndolo. Major General Joseph Ndolo. Now let me tell you about Major General Joseph Ndolo, how he acquired that position. It also reflects a lot of how he lost it and how other leaders came up. There's a time during Brigadier Hardy's time when Brigadier Hardy was the CDF, Chief of the Defense Forces. He was deputized by a full colonel. He was deputized by a full colonel who was also a European, a British. Then the full colonel left, and he remained with several lieutenant colonels. He had several lieutenant colonels. Some of two of the lieutenant colonels were Mulinge, Jackson Kimeu Mulinge, and Joseph Ndolo. They were of the same rank, but out of the several lieutenant colonels who were there, in any discipline services, a person who was appointed earlier than you, for example, we are two inspectors, and I was promoted even a day ahead of you, then I'm senior to you. So Mulinge had been appointed the lieutenant colonel ahead of Ndolo and others. So when it was felt that one of the lieutenant colonels should be, when it was felt that one of the lieutenant colonels should deputize Brigadier Hadi, of course the senior most was Mulinge. So Mulinge was at Army headquarters at Hurlingham, deputizing Brigadier Hadi. When he was deputizing Brigadier Hadi, he was a lieutenant colonel like any other lieutenant colonel who were in the camps there. At that time, how many battalions were there? There were battalions up to 7th Battalion. That is 1st, 3rd, 5th, and there were 4 battalions. So they had around 5 lieutenant colonels, and one of them was senior. Mulinge was made to deputize Hadi. That was in 1964. And then what happened? You remember in 1964, there was a lot of military mutiny in East Africa. There was military mutiny in East Africa. They were not coordinated, but they happened at the same time. So those soldiers who participated in the military mutiny in 1964 in Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. Now let us talk of those they happened at the same time, such that someone may have thought they were coordinated, but I don't think they were coordinated. So they happened at the same time, and when they happened at the same time, those who were in Kenya, the soldiers who participated in the mutiny, were court-martialed in, I don't know whether it is Gilgil or Lanet, but somewhere in Nakuru. And the commanding officer who presided over the court-martial was none other than Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Ndolo. So Joseph Ndolo he presided over the court-martial. And Jomo Kenyatta was very happy about it, and he promoted Joseph Ndolo to be a full colonel or a full colonel. This made, now, Mulinge was deputizing the brigadier, and now we had a full colonel, Ndolo, who was in Nakuru. So they exchanged. Ndolo went to Nairobi to deputize Hadi, and Mulinge went to Nakuru to take over the battalion of Ndolo. That one, of course, did not. It must have annoyed Mulinge, and he kept quiet. So Ndolo, when Ndolo became, from around 65, he became a full colonel. He went and deputized that. And then shortly later, he was made a brigadier. Actually, when he took over as the CDF, he was a brigadier. He was a brigadier when he took over from General Robert Penfold. So the time when Joseph Ndolo took over, he was a brigadier. That was 1st June 1969. But before he left, he was already a Major General. So he left 24th June 1971. So he became the leader for 3 years. Now, when he was the CDF, Chief of the Defense Forces, please understand he was not the army commander. He was the Chief of the Defense Forces. He was promoted to Major General, and first of all, when he was promoted to Brigadier, Mulinge was made a colonel, full colonel. And when Joseph Ndolo was made a Major General, Mulinge was made a major. Mulinge was made a brigadier. So around 1971, Ndolo was the army commander, not army commander, was the chief of the defense forces, a major general, and he was deputized by Mulinge, who was a brigadier. Then in 1971, the army tried to overthrow the government. 1971, the army tried to overthrow the government. Not just the army, but even politicians. There was the politicians mostly from Luo and Kamba tribes. That is when somebody, Gideon Mutiso, who was the MP for Yatta, he was jailed for 9 years. In fact, after completing 9 years, he came back, became again the MP for Yatta. So when they wanted to overthrow the government, they pulled in Nani. They brought in Mulinge. But as I've told you, Mulinge had a historic bitterness. He had historic bitterness. He was annoyed that he had not been made he had been overtaken. He had been overtaken by Ndolo. So when Ndolo talked to Mulinge about the coup, Mulinge played along, but Mulinge went and informed. There are two ways that President Kenyatta knew about it. One, these people knew that Julius Nyerere was a socialist. So there are some people who sent a message to Nyerere to try and, but he didn't agree. So he tipped Jomo Kenyatta. Simultaneously, Mulinge, in what most likely was because of being bitter about being overtaken, he went and briefed Jomo Kenyatta. So Jomo Kenyatta went and called Joseph Ndolo and told him that you want to overthrow me, I'll not take you. He wanted to jail him. Yes, he wanted to jail him. He wanted to take him to court. But Mulinge told Jomo Kenyatta that military people are very bitter people. If you take Ndolo to jail, to committee, the military will overthrow you. So Jomo heard that and he changed his mind. He did not charge Ndolo. He just told him, can you write a resignation letter? So Ndolo wrote a resignation letter and went. And another problem that I read from my special branch files is that Ndolo celebrated too early. He celebrated too early. He could go to any occasion. After taking a beer or two, he would then say, look, angalia hii sura, angalia hii sura. Mwaka ujao hii sura ndio itakuwa kwa pesa. So all in all, it was nabbed in the bud, and Ndolo was told to resign and go home. When Ndolo went to resign, and it was being said that the new, that is now when Mulinge took over, Jomo Kenyatta was not happy about the position of a CDF. Jomo Kenyatta was not happy about the position of a CDF, and he broke it. You know, Ndolo was in charge of the Navy commander was answerable to Ndolo. The Air Force commander was answerable to Ndolo. So that is when, just like I said, it was the Air Force was like the Air Army or the Police Air Wing. So that is when Jomo Kenyatta now decreed that the Air Force will be will have its own commander, and Navy will have its own commander, and the commanders would be the Army, not the Army, the Air Force. There was Lieutenant General, no, Lieutenant Colonel Gishuru. Lieutenant, he was not related to James Gichuru, but just a namesake. But he was a Kikuyu. Then the Navy was headed by Lieutenant Colonel Kimaru. Kimaru. Some people may think Kimaru is okay, we have Kimaru in Kikuyu, but this Kimaru was a coastal fellow. I'll not follow about those people who are army. It will extend the scope so much. Who was the head of the Navy after Kimaru, and who was the head of the Air Force after? Of course, Air Force after Gishuru, it was Karaoke. Karaoke who had that issue, and after Karaoke there was Major General Mohammed. But I want to concentrate on the overall. So when Ndolo was told to resign, he resigned, and the rank was designated not as CDF but Army Commander. So 3 commands were there. That is where who could pass information to either the Minister for Defense or the Commander in Chief. I had a connection with Ndolo. I was schooling in PBS Kajiado, PBS Primary Boarding School Kajiado, but I used to spend most of my time in hospitals. There's a time I had an appointment at Aga Khan Hospital. We by then we had a boy who was called Philip Ndolo. If I'm not wrong, he was called Philip Ndolo. There were rumors that by then I was in standard 4. There were rumors that he was the son of the army commander. But it was just a rumor that we didn't know. Then one day when I had an appointment at Aga Khan Hospital, TB, I had a TB. I had an appointment at Aga Khan Hospital in Nairobi. That's a time Major General himself went to PBS in full uniform. It was around closing time. He was shocked. Imagine, he was the army and in the CDF, and his son was schooling at PBS Kajiado, but he didn't know that Kajiado there was no electricity. So he went and had a parade. He called it, and he was in uniform. He told the students that by this time next year, the government will bring electricity to this school. The whole of Kajiado town, there was no electricity. Kajiado got electricity in 1972. So when he said that, shortly after, it is electricity in 1972, but it is not related to what he was saying. By this time next year, you'll get electricity. He meant that when he's the president, he'll make sure that electricity comes to the school, not even the town. Now that is when we now knew that Kumbe Philip Ndolo was really the son of Major General Ndolo. Now Ndolo, after resigning, he went home and used to tell people that he's still the substantive. It's only that he doesn't work. But then those things started spreading. The same Mulinge went to Jomo Kenyatta and told him that in Ukambani people are saying that the army has 2 commanders. Don't you see? I used to be the CDF overall. Now this fellow is just in charge of the army. Just in charge of the army. He's not even taken my position. Then Mulinge was called. Jomo Kenyatta had reached a stage where Jomo Kenyatta had reached a stage where he was so annoyed that he felt that if Ndolo continues saying the way he's saying, then he'll be jailed. So he told him, you next time special branch tell me that you're telling people that you are still in active service, I'll have you jailed. So that was when he stopped saying that. As I said, July 1971, not July, June, Mulinge took over. But Mulinge did not take over as CDF. No, he took over as the army commander. So during that time, from 1971 to around 1983, after the coup, after the coup, uh, after the coup is when the rank of CDF was reintroduced, but it was not reintroduced in the former for the way it was. No, it was that Mulinge had started pushing Moi. Mulinge had started pushing Moi to retire, and Moi was insisting that Mulinge remains. That is when it was agreed between Mulinge and Moi that Mulinge becomes the chief of the general staff. That is, the CDF are still overseeing these people. And even after that, Moi still continued insisting that, not Moi, Mulinge still insisted that he was getting old. And that is when Moi sent Sawe, Lieutenant General Sawe, to oversee, to understudy him. But Sawe and Mahmoud could not agree. But and Sawe had even to make sure that Mahmoud, to convince Moi. Moi had a problem. Moi had a problem. You could be a superintendent from another tribe, and an inspector who was a Kalenjin could convince Moi more than you from another tribe who was a senior superintendent. So there was a small problem between when Mulinge now left the active work of army commander and became a ceremonial CGS. He still wanted to go home, and Moi wanted Sawe to do that. But as Mulinge was made the CGS, Sawe was the army commander. But it was felt that Sawe should be made a deputy CGS to understudy Mulinge, so that when Mulinge retires, Sawe can take over as the CGS. When Sawe went, his deputy, Mahmoud Mohammed, became a major general and became the army commander. But Sawe discovered that being a deputy CGS was ceremonial, so he wanted to be both the two, and he pushed Mahmoud. Mahmoud was found in Nairobi. Everybody was out of town for military practice, but Mahmoud was found within Nairobi for the simple reason that he was clearing. He was clearing before going home. So that is how it became. And why did Sawe not take over from Mulinge? After the 82 August coup, after the 82 August coup attempt, it was thwarted by Mahmoud because he was in Nairobi, just because he was clearing. He was clearing. You remember that was the beginning of the month, so he was clearing to go home, but he was there and took control. So Moi wanted him, and since the two Sawe and Mahmoud could not work together, one had to go, and in this case it was Sawe who had to go. When it happened that way, first of all, Mahmoud had to go to the Air Force and head it, and then later on he took over from you. There were two lieutenant generals. Mahmoud was in charge of the only time Air Force has ever been headed by a lieutenant general, where by an infantryman. Mahmoud was the Air Force commander, while at the same time there was a lieutenant colonel. There were three. There was a lieutenant general who was headed the army, lieutenant general who headed the Air Force, and lieutenant general who was the deputy uh, chief of general staff. That is Sawe. So Sawe was retired, and when Mulinge retired in 1986, Mahmoud took over. Now let me go back to, because I've talked a lot there, let me go back to General Joseph Ndolo. Joseph Ndolo was there between 1st June 1969 to 24th June 1971. That is 3 years and 3 weeks. And where his position uh, was removed, and Mulinge became the army commander. So the Navy and Air Force had their own people. But around 1983, Mulinge was elevated from army commander to become a CDF. So what I'm trying to say is that CDF or CGS, whichever name was applicable, it used to be there up to Ndolo's time. And when Mulinge took over, it disappeared for some years before it came back. So Mulinge was the CGH between 83 and 86 for 3 years. Then Mahmoud took over. Mahmoud took over as a CDF. He used to put on Air Force uniform because the last posting he was in the Air Force before he became the CDF. He took over in 1986 and was there until 1996. That is 10 years. Now, the 10 years, he handed over to Tonje in 1996. But let us talk something about Mahmoud. Mahmoud was retiring 1982, August coup, and he retired in 1996. That is 14 years later. That one was also addressed by Tonje. Now, Tonje came in 1996, where he said that a lot of people are retiring without being given options. I mean, positions in the office to do that. So that is when he came up with the Tonje rules, and he said he was going to be there for 4 years. He used to say that it would be 4 years, and after 4 years are over, it could only be renewed once if his age did not allow. But when he completed, his age did not allow, but he was asked by the president to add 4 more years. He said, I cannot be the first person to break my rules. I cannot be the first person to break my rules. And he insisted on going. He had a very good deputy. He had a very good deputy called I'm forgetting the name of the Luo. There's a Luo, Opande. Yeah, Opande. He was deputized by Opande. Opande could make a very good CGS, but he did not because of two reasons. One, in the Tonje rules, they were saying of rotational, so that one time it goes to this service, that way. He's the one who started that rule. So if you would start that rule and then stay beyond the years, would be bad. And then also it was also not good for him to hand over to Opande because Opande was also in the army. And the other thing also, Opande had to do with his tribe. I don't think Moi was comfortable with Opande as a Luo and Opande himself. You can even remember his lieutenant general was not gotten in Kenya. He got it. He was a major general, and since he had worked in very many countries as a commander of the UN forces, there was a place he was to go to head, and it was to be headed by a lieutenant general. So that is how he got his lieutenant general. But that being, the Tonje rule had to start in the year 2000. It moved out of the army because if you look at Mahmoud, yes, he was wearing the Air Force uniform, but he was an infantryman who had been in the army all his life, 90% of his life. So in the year 2000, the mantle of CGH was given to the Kenyan Navy in the form of General Joseph Kibwana. It was given to Joseph Kibwana of the Kenyan Navy, who stayed there up to 2005. 2005, it went back to the army. To Jeremiah Kianga. Jeremiah Kianga was there from 2005 to 2011. Now, if you see it at this way, it appears that the army was in the middle, so it would go to the navy, then come back, go to before. But if you look at it today, it has been changed so that before it goes back to the army, it has to rotate round. On 2011, that is February 12th, not February, July 12th, Kianga handed over to a pilot who is Julius Karangi of the Kenya Air Force. He stayed there from 2011 to 2015. He just served one term, Julius Karangi. Then Julius Karangi handed over to a seaman, that was on 5th May 2015 to 10th May 2025, who was Samson Mwadhedhe. Samson Mwadhedhe handed over to a soldier. He handed over a soldier on 11th May 2020 to 30th April 2023, who was called Robert Kibochi. Kiboshi. Kiboshi now handed over to an airman. You can see it was, but now it has been changed. I think in future it will just rotate round. The Kiboshi was a soldier. He handed over to. He had completed his first term, and the age allowed for him to serve the second term, but he had acquired a PhD. And so he told President Uhuru Kenyatta that he wanted to go to the university. With a PhD, he would go to university to be a lecturer. So age allowed, but he could not. So he continued. He could not continue the second term. Then on 29th April 2023, up to 18th April 2024, Francis Ogola took over, an airman. But then later he died over an accident in Cheptulel Hills, which is the border. If you check, is it 2 to 3 days ago? We had a police helicopter which nearly fell in Cheptulel area. It is there on the social media. So Ogola died a natural accident, usage of old, and his position was taken for the very first time. In other places, the generals would retire, and I think it is only him and Ndolo. Ndolo, of course, was evicted, if I can use that word. Ndolo was evicted because of 1971 coup attempt, and Ogola died. So others have been having the ceremony of handing over to the other. So when Ogola died, he gave it, Nani took over. He did not give him, but Kiboshi took over, and Kiboshi is still the chief of the defense force to date.